Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced by North Idaho College located on Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guests.
I wish to begin today's program by wishing all of you very happy holidays, and depending on your background, you'll be celebrating the holiday in different ways. Happy Hanukkah or Happy Christmas, or in other parts of our society, however you bring close to the end of the year, we hope you will have a very, very fine time. Most every year we try to, around these holidays, provide something that might be helpful to you as you celebrate in your own way. And in order to do that for our program, I welcome Rick Schultz to the program. He is an instructor and he's the director of our culinary arts program at North Idaho College. And I must add, I have on a number of occasions been privileged to be at the dinners that he has served, and he and his students do a wonderful job. On the first program today, Rick is going to share, after we talk about some things, some wonderful menus. You might get your pad and pencil, and we'll try to put those up on the screen also. Rick, welcome to the program. You've been here before.
Thank you, Tony. I have been here before.
And it's nice to have you here, and we've had good response. Viewers really enjoy what you provide for them.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
And as always, I'm very pleased to have our regular panelist, Janelle Burke, who's an attorney in the state of Idaho, and we'll ask Janelle to commence today's questioning.
Rick, this is one of those times of the year when it can be rather stressful. There are so many things to do. You probably have some suggestions for cutting down on that stress when people are planning their menus and planning their holiday meals. Can you share some of those with our viewers?
Well, you know, I thought, as I was thinking about this, I thought that the holidays themselves are hugely stressful without planning big family functions, which are always there. Shopping, gifts, all the special things that you want to do. So, of course, my number one suggestion to everybody, as I wish I could practice more, as we all wish we could practice more, is to be more organized from the beginning. Certainly, the more you have organized food-wise from the outset, the easier it's going to be far down the road. I think a lot of people try to plan just way too much to do over the holidays as far as new things. So one of my suggestions is to take something that you're semi-familiar with and jazz that up a little bit. To take something that is an old family favorite and put a new little twist on it without having to reinvent the whole wheel, because I know from when I do my cooking, I know when my students do it, the first time you make a recipe, it's always very hard and very stressful. The second time, a little bit less so. Third time, it starts becoming easier. During the holiday times, oftentimes people try to do that first time when people are coming. And there is nothing worse than trying a new recipe when you have 14 people coming for dinner, the clock's ticking, showtime is coming up, and you feel the pressure. So try the recipe out beforehand would be a great suggestion that I would have. Do a recipe that you have done over the years that you're comfortable with and just put a new slant on it. Trying a new presentation style so that it may not look like the same thing. I know in my program I teach the students that presentation is second only to preparation. So how you prepare is one thing, but then how you present it to your guests is another thing. So sometimes just that fresh mint is enough to add a little bit of color. So, you know, you don't have to come out with a whole battery of fabulous types of foods. It's just and of course, the more new things you try to do, I think the more stress you're going to add to your life and the more chance you have of having a bit of failure. And of course, when you have the failure,
it's not fun.
It's no fun at all.
What about make ahead? Do you recommend make ahead for those special dinners that if you're going to have in company, so that you can actually enjoy your company when they get there?
Again, I talk to my students all the time about doing as much pre-prep as possible. There's so many types of things that you can do. Your vegetable chopping, many things can be done a day, 2 days ahead of time, 3 days ahead of time. The more you get those things finished and done ahead of time, the easier your end result is certainly going to be. To go along with that, I always suggest that you read the recipe 2 or 3 times before you ever attempt to do that. It's good because then you can make your ingredient list, because there's nothing more frustrating than going to produce something and be missing 1 or 2 vital ingredients. Again, the frustration, the stress sets in. So read your recipe real well, read it a number of times, and then do as much as you can ahead of time, putting it into plastic bags or in the bowl in the back of the refrigerator or something to take care of that. Then at the very end, all you have to do is just your last minute, put it together. So absolutely, in the industry, restaurants could not survive without that pre-prep, or we call it in the industry, just so you guys can learn a new little terminology, we call that mise en place, which means literally in French is everything ready or everything in its place. So that means when you go to do a recipe, you think beyond the ingredients, you think about which bowls you're going to need to use, and you get those out ahead of time. You're going to need a spatula, you're going to need tongs, preheat your oven. The more of the mise en place that you do, the easier your recipe is going to be able to be produced correctly.
Rick, we have viewers watching that love to entertain, and we have hosts and hostesses and some excellent cooks, and you're a great chef, and you're also a great instructor. I had forewarned the audience that they need to get their pen and their pad, and I know that in talking to some people, even though they have their favorite recipes or menus, they're always excited, people who are very involved in this and connoisseur of foods, for new dishes to prepare. So we're going to go through our first one that you brought with you, and they'll put it up on the screen. I don't believe you have a monitor to look at, but it's now up on the screen, and it's cream puffs. Would you take them? It's up there, and take them through what that would be.
All right, but before we go there, we must realize, or we must ask the question, if you know what the term chef means, Tony.
Well, can we do that and then come back to the shelf, if you don't mind, because it just went up on the screen.
Okay.
So if they'll put it back on the screen,
all right.
I want to get the recipe.
So what we have here is profiteroles. Profiteroles is a choux paste. It is also eclair shells is another terminology that people would be very commonly known as. And that is just the pastry itself. It doesn't have any sugar in it, and so it's got a variety of different applications. So this particular one is just a mixture of boiling milk or water, adding your butter to that, melting the butter. To that, you then would add your flour, and you're going to stir that in a bowl or in the saucepan until it forms a ball and comes away from the sides. Then it's taken off the heat. You add your eggs one at a time. You're going to beat those in to that flour mixture. Now, at that time, when people are making this, you're adding your first egg, it's going to be a sloppy mess. But I don't want people to be concerned about that sloppy mess, because the more you beat it in, it's going to all be absorbed into that flour mixture, and that sloppy egg mess will disappear. Then you're going to add another egg, you're going to get that sloppy mess again, you're going to beat it in. So when they see that doesn't look right, oh my gosh, what's wrong? Don't be concerned. And of course, I always love cookbooks that say, don't be concerned when you see something amiss, because that's the way it's supposed to be. Once you get all the eggs in, you on a ungreased baking sheet pan, you decide what shape you want. So if you're going to use it for a dessert and you're going to use it for chocolate eclairs, you'd make maybe a long rectangular type shape. If you could also do larger rounds for desserts. A couple of the ideas I have is to make smaller size, put dollop size on there about the size of a $50. And then when that cooks, you bake that off. It's baked off at a high heat because it's leavened by the egg and the moisture that's in there. And the high heat sets the shell or the outside so that moisture is trapped in there. And then after 10 minutes, you drop it down, I think about to 350, 325, and then let it cook until it's fairly dry. You don't want to bring it out while it's still soft at all because of the trapped moisture inside. When you bring it out and it begins to cool, that steam will turn back into moisture or water, and then your whole shell will deflate. So a lot of people, when they make those, will, as it gets very close, will just turn their oven off and then just leave it, and then it'll naturally kind of dry as the oven naturally cools down. So there you have your profiterole shells.
Now, they had put up on screen cream puffs. Is that...
Cream puffs, right.
Yeah.
But I tried to have a name that people would recognize really easily.
If they'll put that up again just for a minute, because some people might not got down all the ingredients, and so if they'll just put that back on the screen.
Are we going to go back to my question?
Yeah, we will in a moment, but I just want to make sure they get all the ingredients. Like the first one is like a half a cup of, if you just run through that real quick.
Half a cup of water, 4 tablespoons of butter. Again, that was where I said bring your water and your butter to a boil, get that all melted up. Add your flour, stir that in until it goes away from the sides of the pan. You'll form a ball there. 2 eggs at room temperature, so you add an egg, blend that in well, add your next egg, blend it in well. In your oven, 375 degrees, you're going to leave that for about 10 minutes, then you're going to drop your temperature down a little bit, and then you're going to bake that off approximately 30 minutes, it says there. Make sure they're a couple inches apart so they don't touch.
Sure. Well, thank you. I know people will use that, and I appreciate it. Now then, the fact that I want to do that while it's on the screen, back to your question that you wanted me to ask, and that is about what is a shelf or what is
No, I wanted you to answer.
Well, I'm not the expert in that area.
No,
so
but that's
I'm
okay.
Here
we're here
questions.
to have holiday fun,
Yes.
Tony.
Well,
So,
to me, a chef is someone who's well trained and understands not only ingredients and quality of food, but also the aesthetics of it, and that sets them aside from we cooks who don't have the appreciation of a great variety of very delicate dishes, and to us, aesthetics is not something we're very creative at.
okay. The chef is the person in charge. The one person in charge of a kitchen is the chef. So the reason I asked you that question is kind of, quite frankly, you're the chef of this show because you're sort of the guy in charge. So I just thought it would be fun, and before long your camera people will be calling you chef because you're the guy, the one person who's in charge of what's going on. However, right now you're probably not thinking that since I sort of turned things a little bit on you, but I thought it would be interesting because the term chef is thrown around
Sure.
a lot as I'm the chef of this and the chef of that. All those other people in the kitchen are just cooks. It's that one person who's in charge is the chef.
Yes, and coordinating and directing,
Exactly.
and instructing.
Takes a lot of experience.
Before we go back to Janelle, let's thank you for that. Let's go to the second recipe because you brought a second one, I believe, today, and tell us all about that. And I'll put that one on the screen also.
Is that the? I think that's just the things we're going to do with that. With those profiteroles.
Okay.
Basically, we have the profiteroles or those eclair shells, and they are that is just your vehicle for many other things that we're going to do with
Now here,
that.
the appetizers that just went up on the screen.
Are the appetizers
Yeah,
up?
right there,
Okay.
you can see those.
So on the appetizers, you have the little, taking the small profiteroles. Now here's something that can be done. These rolls can be done week ahead of time and put in the freezer. You can either cook them off or you can shape them and put them in the freezer uncooked and then bring them out and put them in the oven from a frozen point. And so then once you have the shells done, you can take the little small ones and you can fill them with a smoked cream cheese filling for a wonderful little appetizer.
Which you're putting up there now.
Little finger food. Chives and cream cheese is another, just a little idea that we have. Crab and cream cheese. You can put little bits of squares of cheese over the top of them once they're filled. Put them in a hot oven just to melt down. Again, presentation, have that little bit of melted cheese on the top, and then you have some appetizers that are delightfully easy, something that your guests have not had before, and certainly not at your house. And again, no stress because your cream cheese can be done ahead of time, your shells can be done either way ahead of time pre-cooked or raw, frozen, and you can bake them off just that day, and then you have a nice appetizers, and it's easy. There's no stress whatsoever for an appetizer. And again, just like you said, the time you want to spend is not in the kitchen, even though a kitchen is a very wonderful gathering place. As we all know that at every party, where does everybody end up is in the kitchen having, chit-chatting and having fun. And certainly nowadays kitchens are designed for people, open kitchens, and they're designed to do more entertaining there. And guests also, lots of guests like to be asked to do things in the kitchen to help. When people say, is there anything I can do to help out? There's nothing wrong with saying, yeah, would you chop these onions? You don't always have to have total 100% control. You can ask, people like to help, and that is where some of the most wonderful conversations in life happen, is when two people are working side by side in a kitchen. Then the talk is free and easy, kind of like going for a walk with someone. You can say, let's have a talk, Tony, and we'd be struggling. But if we went for a walk or we went into the kitchen, started cooking together, before long we would be just chatting away and having a wonderful time.
And you're not isolating the person's responsible for preparation of the food. And
exactly.
Sometimes they lose out on the season and the conversation.
Exactly.
Janelle Burke.
One of the things that also happens to us over the holidays, beside being stressed, is we eat too much. We go to all these wonderful places and we eat all these rich and wonderful foods. But do you have some suggestions for foods that might be lighter and that would be less calorie laden perhaps, but just in general a lighter food so that you don't feel so full and you also don't eat so much? No,
that is like a $20 million question. First of all, in my business, calories is, you don't
think about
watch
that.
It as much. And the reason is because generally, I cook for a living. I've owned a restaurant. I've managed a beautiful restaurant in Chicago for a number of years. People eat out because they want to get away from exactly what you're talking about the everyday worries, which include eating too much, eating the wrong kinds of food. They want to just take a night off and relax. And that's a way, we've approached it. Now, certainly in the years of past, we in the food industry are looking at it completely differently. We're trying to do that, make things lighter. The cream sauces of the 60s and 70s are not as prevalent as they are today. So how do you do it? You use fresh ingredients. Probably the biggest thing you can do is use fresh herbs when you're in that genre. And the herbs can also go to the desserts. Making a mint whipped cream for angel food cake and some fresh fruit as opposed to a heavy cheesecake. But in this business these days, fresh herbs is big. It's really, really big because part of why people like to eat things that are not good for you is because it is very satisfying. It's what you call mouthfeel. It's the mouth appeal. And the more you feel satisfied, then the quicker you're going to stop overeating. And fresh herbs is really big at that. Big with that. It gives you that big full flavors and you're going, wow, that's really good. And so again, that's part of it. The other part is just moderation. Just, don't beat yourself up over having that cheesecake. Just eat that 1 or 2 bites of a cheesecake, not the whole quarter of a cheesecake.
And I would take it's also how you put together your menu so that you balance off a little bit. If you're having a relatively heavy main course, that you would balance off with perhaps a little bit lighter dessert.
You're always trying to balance a menu, whether it be the richness. So if you're going to have a rich entree, you're certainly not going to serve a heavy cream soup with that, or maybe no soup at all. You may do a salad, and you might put the salad in after the meal. So many times, especially around the holidays, you tend to do everything the same way as you did it the year before. I have some friends that live over on the coast, and we have done what's called grazing through Christmas dinner or grazing through Thanksgiving. And you purposely start your meal at 12:30, 1 o'clock, and you might have an appetizer. And again, you then after that, there is nothing following it for quite some time. And that's when everybody goes for a walk together. And then groups naturally kind of break off, and you see the grandparent and the grandchild together, and a memory is made, not only for you watching them, but for the grandchild experiencing that and the grandparent. And then you come back from your walk and you're feeling you've had some exercise. Then you go and have that rich soup that you want, that pumpkin soup or roasted squash and garlic soup. And then after that, you purposely plan or time your meal to maybe go play a game or some other activity. So not only does that help in not feeling that overeating feeling, that horrible feeling, but it also takes an incredible amount of stress off the person in the kitchen, because you're not having to back things up, boom, 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 right down the line. You can spend a whole day enjoying the festivities. So what if you miss out on having your turkey or ham sandwich that night, the cleanup sandwich as it's referred to? You have it the next day, but you make the whole day an event instead of just sitting down and gorging on a huge amount of food. You know, one of the things that's so frustrating being in the food business is that you spend so much time, as you well know. Tony, I don't know, are you a cook?
Very limited.
Do you do family dinners?
I do think.
Because I don't want to cut you out of this.
I just want you to know that I am not at your level of performance.
But Janelle knows that you spend all these hours preparing the wonderful food. And have you ever just sat there going, oh my gosh,
It's gone.
it's gone, it's over that fast? I just spent days working on this. So by grazing through the meal, everybody gets to enjoy it, including the person who makes it, which is usually the most wonderful thing about making food, is watching people eat the food and enjoy the food. So those are some of my suggestions, long-winded as they are.
Well, that's what we want to hear about the details, because this really helps the viewers. And I had not thought of it in those terms. I guess my experience is limited, but I love that term, grazing through. I think that by those kind of comments that you give suggestions to people who might not have tried that before, and it's very sensitive to those who had to prepare. I also liked earlier your comment about more than one person being invited in the kitchen for the conversation. I guess my next question has to do with, in relation to this, when you can take all day or maybe a whole weekend, because the holidays, that's what's so special about them with family, that you're not rushing off to do something else like work and all. You're pausing in life to appreciate your family and your friends. I guess I'll ask the question this way. As we do have these holidays, and they're very much to be remembered in the future, or even when people pass from your life, like a parent or whatever, you remember especially those holidays you had together. Why is food such a center of that celebration?
Well, for a number of reasons. For exactly what you said, so many occasions. Every special occasion, food is always the center. It's a gathering. Certainly anybody who holds meetings knows that if you have food at the meeting, you'll have a lot more people attending the meeting. People like to eat because it takes you away from the other things.
And willing to stay longer in the meeting.
And willing to stay longer in a meeting. That's exactly right. Food, just because of every year it just is passed on, and it's so special, and it sets so hard in your mind because it affects so many senses. It is such a sensual thing to do. You see the food, you eat the food with your sight, the very first thing. When it comes closer to the table, you're looking at the food going, oh, wow. And then if you're like me, the very first thing I do is then I want to smell it. So, oftentimes you'll see people in the kitchen always are doing this. Yeah. You'll see this. It's not a weird thing. It's because they want to smell the food. And that's what, so then you smell the food, and those, it's imprinted in your brain. How many times have you smelled something and you go, oh, that's reminds me of, Aunt so-and-so or my grandma or, what have you, just by smelling something. Then, of course, you put it in your mouth and you immediately start to feel it, textures. You then get the, again, that mouth feel, the taste of it. And then, of course, the satisfying aspect of eating and going from hunger. Oftentimes around the holidays, you're never really hungry. You don't even wake up hungry, let alone go to the meal hungry because of snacking. But it's because you're sharing it with friends, the enjoyment with people that you love or are getting to know. A lot of people coming to the holidays, maybe this year we'll be sharing a holiday with someone they don't particularly know, someone who is alone or lonely for the holidays. And what a wonderful treat, what a wonderful gift to give somebody by having someone who is more alone or lonely at the holidays to join, your raucous, festive family gathering. But it's so so sense oriented. That's why it is what it is.
Sure.
Plus it's fun. Tastes good.
Janelle Burke.
Sometimes when we go to dinner at someone else's house, we'd like to take a little gift along with us or a little something to show our appreciation. Do you have some suggestions of the kinds of things that people can sometimes take along that are appropriate and that are good and that meet all of those necessities?
I have lots of ideas. First of all, you know whose house you're going to for dinner, so put some thought into who they are and what they're about. If they're a steak and potatoes cook, maybe you take them a package of wonderful, wonderful steaks for some other day. If they love to experiment, then you go to the gourmet food store and you get green Madagascar green peppercorns packed in brine. Make up a little basket with some pine nuts. Anybody who loves to cook, you can always take them great quality olive oil, a bottle, and though you who may not know or appreciate what that is, anybody who loves to cook understands what great olive oil is. That's like liquid gold. It's the gift from the gods, and certainly is revered in many parts of the country as just that. So you look at a bottle of olive oil and you think, oh my gosh, this is $15 or $25, or I've seen bottles the size of wine bottles that are upwards of $50 and $60 a bottle. But you're not glugging that into a saute pan. You are teaspooning it over a salad or in a bowl.
I have to interrupt. I'm so sorry we're out of time. The good news, you'll be back next week for our next holiday.
We're out of time already?
We're out of time, and we will have some more menu items when you come back to help us celebrate the new year. Thank you, Rick. It's just delightful having you on the program.
Thank you.
And Janelle Burke, thank you for your fine questions. And again, I would say to our viewers that we hope you're having a wonderful holiday season, and we hope that our wonderful guest has really excited you about some of the things that you wish to do during this holiday, and it just absolutely wonderful suggestions. As I indicated, our guest will be back next week to talk about menus for the New Year, celebrating the New Year's. Again, I want to wish you such a happy holiday. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running entirely college-produced program on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us again at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.